Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be showing you a few different recipes that you can use once your windowsill herb gardens are up and running. Hopefully very kid-friendly recipes. I think my son would love them, so let's get started. The first thing that we're going to need to do is wash our hands to make sure that everything is sanitary while we're cooking, and we need to remember that when we're handling raw meat that we wash our hands afterwards so that way we're not contaminating other products while we're using them. Okay, so the first recipe that we are going to be doing is the tomato basil marinara, and this can be paired with any pasta that you choose to pair it with, whatever your favorite is. I personally think like bow tie are cute, and I think kids agree. I think they like them because it's something fun and different. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go through and we are going to prep all the ingredients that need prepped. And then we will go through and cook them. So on this one, we are going to chop up the onion, mince garlic, and we are going to chop the basil. And then we will cook them once they're all prepped. All right, so you guys will, I have my phone in front of me because I have the recipe cards on it, and you guys will be getting a copy of all these recipe cards along with your own windowsill herb garden. That way you can use your own fresh herbs in all of these recipes. I did buy most of these because I don't have my windowsill herb garden yet to work from, but I do have those in front of me, and you guys will see something similar when you are working with your herbs. So for the tomato basil marinara, we are going to need 3 cloves of garlic minced. So I'm gonna just clean off these cloves, kind of cut the bottom off here, makes it a little easier to peel the cloves. That didn't work. I'm gonna have to redo that. Okay, so you guys will need 3 cloves of garlic, and we're gonna mince that garlic. Now I have a garlic mincer, so I will mince the garlic on my own, but you can buy already minced garlic from the store. It's just kind of preference. If you have the tools and you can do it on your own, awesome. And if not, then you can just buy it already minced at the store. So you will need 3 cloves, and I have 3 cloves here, so I'm going to set this to the side. And you will need to peel the garlic before you mince it. So there's kind of like a hard layer of skin on it. It's not too hard. It peels off with your fingers. Not too hard to do. Okay, now that I have my garlic peeled, I'm going to put it in my garlic mincer. It looks like this. You're just going to put it in the top, and then you press down, and it comes out minced. Super easy. I'm going to put it in this little bowl, so that way it is ready for later. Now, if you really like garlic, you can always feel free to add more. This is about what 3 cloves of garlic will look like. I know it's not a lot, but garlic is very strong in scent and flavor, so you don't need a lot of garlic. It will go a long way. So next, we will clear off our cutting board, and we are going to chop our onion. Okay, so the recipe calls for 1 medium onion. That's kind of personal preference too. You can add more onion if you like onion, or you can just kind of go less on onion if you don't like onion. Some people don't like it at all. So it's just preference. I always cut the ends off to peel it just because it makes it a little easier to get the different layers of skin off while you're peeling it before you chop it. So you just want to peel off all the different layers of the skin before you chop it. You'll know once you get down to like the actual layers of onion because they are going to be thicker and they're not really going to peel off as easy as what these layers are. All right, once you have your onion completely peeled, it's gonna look like this. And then you are just gonna chop it into little pieces. I typically will go this way and cut round pieces, and then I will go through and cut the other way to dice up the onion. And it doesn't have to be perfect by any means. I'm not a professional chef. I don't expect anyone else to be. I always say it doesn't matter how it looks, it just matters how it tastes. Okay, so there is one section of onion, and you will just do that for the whole onion. Okay, so I have my onion now in this little bowl. My onion was a little bit larger than a medium onion, I would say, so I just filled this bowl up, and once it was full, I stopped chopping. So this we are going to set aside, and we will use this later. Okay, now we have our basil, and I'm just gonna go through and I'm just gonna pick the leaves off the stems because we don't need all the stems in our recipe. And then once we have them all picked, we will go through and chop them until we feel like they are in fine enough pieces to put into our marinara sauce. Okay, so the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of fresh chopped basil. So I know this looks like a lot, but once it's chopped down, it's really not gonna be as much as what you think it is. So I typically just start with them kind of in a bunch and just start at one end and just kind of go through and chop in pretty small sections. It does get kind of messy and hard once you get down to the end because they're in smaller pieces. And then once I cut them that way, I just kind of turn it and I go the other way, and I just repeat that process until I feel like the basil is in small enough pieces. You're gonna want them in pieces probably about that size. To put in your recipe. You don't want any big chunks of basil leaves in there. So just keep chopping and going back and forth until you feel like they are small enough for your liking. Okay, so we have our basil chopped, and we will set this to the side, and then we will start our marinara. It's gonna have to simmer for about 30 minutes once we get everything in the pan. So we are gonna start that, and while that's simmering, we will move on to making our chicken marinade. Okay, so now that we have our items prepped, we are gonna start putting stuff in the pan. This one is really simple to put together once you have these items prepped. It's not gonna take very long. It is gonna have to simmer for a little bit, but other than that, it's very easy to do. So first you're gonna add in 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. I have this brand. It doesn't really matter. You can use whatever brand of olive oil you want. And I have my measuring spoon here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into the pan. Once that oil seems to be heated up, it shouldn't take very long. You're going to want to keep it over a medium-low heat, and then you are going to add onions in to saute them until they are like a translucent color and soft. That is going to take about 8 to 10 minutes according to the recipe. So just kind of put them in there. You'll move them around until they seem like they are ready to move on to the next step. So you can just put those onions in. Once your pan is hot, like I said, not all my onion pieces are cut evenly. They're not going to be. I'm not a professional chef. I try my best, but some of them are going to be bigger than others. And then you just are going to let the onion saute, and it's going to take about 8 to 10 minutes. While this is sauteing, I'm going to go ahead and get everything else ready. Once this is done, we're going to add the garlic in, which we already have prepped. And then we are going to add in our crushed tomatoes, which is just the whole 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. You can use fresh tomatoes if you have them. And of course, you would have to crush those, but it can just also take a can of crushed tomatoes. And then you're going to add in your basil that you chopped, your tomato paste, sugar, salt, and pepper to taste. And so if we can go ahead and get those measured, it'll be a lot easier to throw those in once it's time. All right, so it has now been right about 8 minutes, maybe a little more. And our onions are to the point that they're soft and they are starting to get translucent. So we're gonna go ahead and throw in our garlic, and that is going to cook for about 30 seconds before we throw everything else in. Throw in all of our garlic. All right, now we are going to put in our can of crushed tomatoes. It'll take the whole can. And then we will add in our basil. It takes a 1/4 cup, so I went ahead and measured that out while we were waiting. You'll put that in. And then your tomato paste, 1 tablespoon. It's not going to come out. And then you are going to add your salt, pepper, and sugar, and it takes a teaspoon of all of those. So I had the sugar measured out. I only have 1 teaspoon measuring spoon, so I had to wait to do the rest. So we'll do the salt. And the pepper. Put that in. And then we are going to mix this all in until it's combined really well. Alright, and then you're going to let this come up to a simmer, and once it does, you're going to let it simmer for 20 to 30 minutes. You can let it simmer longer. The longer that it simmers, the more flavor it's going to have. So while this is simmering, we're going to move on to something else. Alright, so now we are moving on to our chicken marinade, and you can do this a couple different ways. If you just want to put the chicken in a marinade and then you can cook it on a stove, or you can put it in a dish with other vegetables and bake it. I am going to be making it, I'm going to leave it in the marinade and then I'm going to cook it on the stove, and then eat it with either the potatoes that we're going to make or the marinara sauce and pasta that we are making. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to add all of our ingredients in this bowl, and then we will prep the chicken. put the chicken in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag and put the marinade on top, and then it can sit for 30 minutes to 24 hours. Because I'm making the chicken tonight, I'm gonna let it sit for 30 minutes, but the longer you let it sit, the more flavor the chicken is gonna absorb from that marinade. So the first thing we are going to need is a 1/4 cup of olive oil. So you will just measure the olive oil. Pour that into the dish. And of course, if you're making more chicken than the recipe calls for, you can double the recipe or do whatever you need to do to make sure that you have enough marinade to cover the chicken properly. Next, we are going to need lemon juice, and I got fresh lemons, and then you can just cut them in half and squeeze. If you get any seeds in the juice, that's not a problem. You can just pick them out. You don't want the seeds to be in your marinade though. All right, so now that I got my 1/4 cup of lemon juice, while I'm pouring it in here, I'm gonna kind of put my fingers at the edge of the cup so it'll stop any of the seeds from going in with the olive oil. After the lemon juice, we are going to need 5 cloves of garlic. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did with the garlic for the marinara sauce that we made. We're just going to get 5 cloves. We will peel them, and then we will use our garlic mincer and put them into the bowl. All right, now we got our garlic minced or peeled. We're gonna put it in our mincer, and we will mince that into our marinade. Okay, next we are going to use dried oregano, and I just bought some oregano from the store because I don't have my herb garden, but you can dry your own oregano to put into the recipe, and we did include a card on how to dry your own oregano, and it can also be used for drying any other herbs you have as well. So 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, and then we are going to use ground thyme, which you can also make if you choose to add thyme to your herb garden. It is not one of them that we supplied for you, but this recipe does call for it. One teaspoon of this as well. And then we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of salt and pepper. There's the pepper. And the salt. And then you are going to mix that all together, and then we will prep the chicken and we'll pour the marinade into the bag over the chicken. With working with raw chicken, we need to make sure we are washing our hands before we touch anything else after we touch the chicken, because raw chicken does carry salmonella and it can make you very sick, so we need to be careful. I grabbed a whisk just to mix the marinade together. You want to make sure the marinade's well mixed. And then we will prep the chicken. So I'm going to get this stuff out of my way before I prep the chicken, just because I don't want to get raw chicken on it, because I'll be reusing some of these items. once you have the chicken stabbed and patted dry, if you'd like, you will take that and you'll put it into a sandwich bag. I have a gallon-sized bag here to make sure all the chicken lays in here nicely. You will pour the marinade into the bag. All right, so you're gonna make sure that marinade's coating the chicken how you would like it to. Make sure it's completely surrounded, and then you're gonna stick it in the fridge and you let it sit for as long as you'd like, between 30 to 24 hours. We're gonna let this sit for 30 minutes and we are going to fry it up in a pan, and then we will see how it looks. All right, so for our last recipe, this is a fairly simple recipe. We are going to be making creamy chive potatoes. So there's not a whole lot of prep. We will have to cut up the potatoes and the chives, and other than that, there isn't really any other prep to do. So we are going to start with the chives first, and we are going to need a 1/4 cup of chives. So this is actually a 1/3 cup measuring cup. My 1/4 cup is dirty from earlier, so we are just going to use that. A 1/4 cup is obviously going to be a little bit smaller than a 1/3, so we just won't fill it all the way full. Chives are super easy. You don't need to do a lot to chop them up. You just gotta kind of hold them together and make little sections with your knife. Not too hard to do. Chives are easy to work with, and they add a lot of great flavors. For example, they're kind of like an oniony flavor that they make. So they are nice to add into recipes that maybe your kids don't like bigger chunks of onion. And then these are just smaller pieces, and they probably wouldn't recognize them as onion, but they do taste very similar to onion. And a lot of times they're used more of like a garnish than they are in recipes. This one will use the chives in both. But they look really pretty on top of recipes, and they taste really good in it. So that is our 1/4 cup of chives that we will use. We'll save some of it for the top. I'll probably just use what I have left over here on the plate as toppings for the chives. I'm just going to put them back in its little container for later. Okay, and last but not least, we are going to cut our potatoes. So we're going to need to peel them and cut them into cubes. So I'm going to peel my potatoes, and I will be right back. All right, so now that your potatoes are peeled, you are going to cut them into little cubes, about 1/2 inch in size. So maybe a little smaller than this, like that. And you're just going to cut all of your potatoes like that. Okay, so now we are going to combine this in the pan with a 1.5 cups of half a stick of unsalted butter and some salt. The salt is just however much you'd like to add in. And then you're going to bring that to a boil, and we're going to reduce heat and simmer for 25 to 35 minutes. So we will get started with that, and then we will finish up with our marinara. And then once that pan is clean, we will move on to our marinated chicken and frying that up. All right, so our marinara sauce is done. It has sat here for 30 minutes. I'm actually going to be not using it with pasta today. I'm going to be putting it in the fridge and using it another night, but that's a great thing that this is easily refrigerated, or you can freeze it as well. So if you wanted to make a bunch of it at once and freeze it, you could use it different times of the month. Once it's made, all you have to do is thaw it, and you can throw it in with some spaghetti or bow tie pasta or spiral noodles or whatever you want to use. So that is awesome. This is done. It looks amazing. It smells amazing. I'm actually going to try a bite here, but I'm going to let it cool off a little bit. And while it's cooling off, I am going to throw our potatoes in here with the butter and the half and half and some salt. So we'll get our potatoes in here. Some half and half. It's a cup and a half, a half and half. And our half a stick of butter, I cut it into smaller pieces, and we're gonna put it in here, and then we are going to bring it to a boil. And once it's to a boil, we're gonna turn it down. It's gonna simmer for 25 to 35 minutes. We're gonna let the potatoes get really tender. The sauce is gonna thicken, and then we're gonna stir in some chives and add the rest for some topping. And I'm really excited about that. Once I get this marinara tasted, I'm gonna put it away in the fridge, and then I'm gonna clean this pan, and we are gonna fry up our chicken marinade and see how it turns out. It smelled delicious when I was putting it away, so I'm really excited about that. And don't forget to add some salt to your potatoes. Not too much, but just enough to add a little bit of flavor is awesome. So that is ready to go, and we are going to get that started. Hopefully it comes to a boil soon. We'll turn it down to a simmer, and I'm really excited about those potatoes. It's really hot, so I gotta blow on it to cool it down. It's a common request in my household for my 2.5-year-old. That is very good. It's a little tart. If you didn't want it that tart, you could always add in a little bit more sugar for your taste or your liking, but that is honestly one of the best marinara sauces I've ever had, and it's my first time ever making one from scratch or homemade. So I'm really excited about that. It turned out really well, and I cannot wait to use it on my own pasta. I got my marinara in this awesome bowl and made a good amount. This would definitely make enough for a whole family. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge. I'm probably gonna use it for my lunches for the rest of the week. But I'm really excited, and stay tuned because now we are gonna fry up our chicken marinade. All right, so these potatoes have come to a boil. We are going to turn them down to a simmer, and they are gonna simmer for like 25 to 35 minutes until they become really tender. So we are going to let them be, and hopefully they thicken up and they get nice and soft, and we'll stir them occasionally, make sure they're not sticking. But we don't want to be super rough with them because it'll start breaking up the potatoes, and they might end up more like mashed potatoes instead of creamy potatoes. So we're going to turn this down just a little bit more to get it to a good simmer, and then we are going to let it go for a little bit. And while that is cooking, I am going to fry up our chicken marinade. I am going to get the olive oil out. I'm going to put a little bit of it in the bottom of the pan just so the chicken doesn't stick, and then we will get the pan heated up. We'll get the chicken going. And like I said, mine was thin sliced, but I only left it in there for probably 30 minutes. So it might not have as much flavor, but the great thing about marinade is that you can make it after dinner or throw it together while your dinner's cooking. It's super easy and quick to throw together, and you can let it sit until the next day, and then when you get home, the chicken's ready. All you have to do is throw it in a pan, make vegetables. You can make these super easy potatoes, and it would make a wonderful meal for you and your family. All right, so I put my pan on to like a medium heat, and the recipes do tell you if you want to bake it with other vegetables. It tells you how to do that. You just pour the marinade over all the vegetables, stick it in the oven at 400, and then when you pull it out, it is all done. The vegetables are done, the chicken's cooked, and it's a very healthy meal for you and your family. The chicken is now cooking. You might want to turn it up a little bit higher. I probably didn't need to put so much olive oil in because I poured the marinade over the chicken, but that won't be an issue. So I turned it up a little bit. I'm gonna use tongs just because it's gonna be a little easier to flip the chicken with the tongs, but you could use a spatula, you could use whatever you really wanted to. A fork would probably even work. But we just want to make sure when we're cooking the chicken, we get it cooked all the way through, because even like handling raw chicken with the salmonella, if you don't get it cooked all the way through, it can also cause food poisoning. So we just want to be careful and make sure it's cooked all the way through. Most of the time, I'll cut my chicken in half to make sure that it's white all the way through. If it's white all the way through, then it's cooked. If there's still some pink to it, or if it's, you know, like a pinkish white, a light pink, then you probably need to let it cook for a little bit longer. Alright, so I just cut into this big piece of chicken, and it is still pink on the inside, so I'm going to go ahead and check the other chicken, make sure that they are cooking through. If they're done, I'll take them off. If not, I'll leave them on there, make sure they get cooked all the way through. This one's still pretty pink. This smaller one might be done. You normally can tell too, if they cut through easier, most of the time they are closer to being done. When they are still kind of tough to cut through, they are most likely not done. That one still needs just a little bit longer. Check this one last little piece here. Needs just a little bit longer. So now I think this chicken tastes very good, but if you're not a fan of lemon, you might not want to put as much lemon in, because you can definitely taste it. And I know that some people don't really like when there is a lemon in their cooking, so if you're one of those people, then you can just back off on that lemon juice. Maybe instead of doing a quarter cup, you could do like 1/8 of a cup or something like that, instead of doing the full quarter cup, and then it wouldn't be as lemony for you. They have thickened up awesome. They are very tender potatoes. So I am now going to, I'm going to bring this over here. I'm going to add in most of the chives. Leave just a few there for garnish. I'm gonna mix these in. Oh my gosh, that looks awesome. I'm not a big mashed potato fan, but these potatoes look super good. I'm gonna grab a fork and try one of these. That bite was very hot, but those potatoes are phenomenal. Those are seriously some of the best potatoes that I've ever had. They're soft, they're creamy. The chives in it gives you just the right amount of like this garlicky, oniony taste without the garlic or onion being overpowering. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you enjoy these recipes as much as I have. I hope that you guys have a good time making these recipes. I hope that you enjoy working with the herbs that you'll get from your windowsill herb garden. And I hope that you guys love the flavors that we were able to create in this beautiful plate that you'll be able to create on your own too, with the herbs that you have grown on your own. I cannot wait to eat these potatoes, and thank you guys for joining me on this awesome video on how to cook using herbs from your herb garden.